What is going on, everyone? You're all very welcome back to the Gaelic Gridiron podcast, sponsored by Print My Pint. Make sure to check them out for your next wedding, birthday, celebration, whatever you have going on. Make it extra special with Print My Pint. Thank you again to them for their continued support this season. They really have been great to work with. Jimmy English and Connor Tate holding down the fort again in your ears and on your screen. Coming to you after an absolutely mind-blowing, Connor, frankly, week 11 of the NFL. Lots to get through, lots to talk about. We have the final NFL International Series game of 2025 in Madrid. First ever game to take place in Spain. You were working. You had to watch the game on the big screen. You couldn't make it down. We were hoping to get you down to Madrid. It seems that you are based in Spain. But how did your weekend go? Did you manage to watch much football?
Kind of ironic that I made it out to Berlin and couldn't make it to Madrid, given where I am at the moment. But yeah, I got to watch a fair amount of football, and thank goodness for that because it's back to the great product that we know the NFL to be. Lots of plot twists, and obviously, like one of those days we have 13, 14 hours of straight football with an international game, which I think would probably be best hearing from you about that, given you were actually there and able to soak it up as opposed to me. But yeah, I caught a lot of football.
Yeah, let's start with the Dolphins Commanders game in Madrid, because obviously it was a historic occasion, much as Dublin was. Obviously, we had the first NFL international game in Ireland to start off the slate of international games, and now we had the first NFL game in Spain. And as I said, kind of throughout the weekend, the game, when it was on paper with the two teams at hand, there was kind of two schools of thought. Either it was going to be a very, very bad game and a kind of a slow game, or both teams were going to go for it and absolutely light it up. It ended up being the former. Unfortunately, it was not a great game at all. Both teams kind of lethargic coming out, really. I don't know. There wasn't much firepower going on. 16-13, the Dolphins running out victors in the end, but it did have an exciting finish with the field goal. So I think that was probably actually the best bit of that game. Really, what was
Yeah.
the dramatic ending.
Yeah, it it was one of those classic international games where you don't know what you're going to get, and neither team really shows up for it. They can blame jet lag on this one, I guess, but a little disappointing, I think, for the Spanish fans who, as you say, before the season were very hyped up for this matchup, and it just has materialized into this thing that's fizzled out and wasn't
Mm.
of any real importance. And I guess what we saw on the field kind of portrayed that scenario. So disappointing for everyone all around. Interesting seeing on social media how people reacted to the event itself. And you know,
Yeah,
I
there
saw,
wasn't a lot of atmosphere in Madrid, really, to be honest with you.
yeah,
I got in early Saturday, and obviously the weather didn't help. I had planned to be going around the city, going to the various events, the
yeah,
Dolphins fan zone, the different things that were kind of going on. The weather, unfortunately, really put a damper to that. But I think it was the fact that Madrid is so vast and so
mm,
sprawling. Even the city center, there's so much space for the fans, to kind of spread out. There was no real congregation of fans where in London before the game in Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, there's always a great atmosphere outside the
yeah,
stadium. Wembley is the same. Even I'm sure in Berlin and I know in Munich last year, the day before the game in the kind of Marienplatz was fantastic.
yeah.
The amount of the variety and the color and the energy of the fans. That just wasn't there in Madrid for whatever reason. I don't know if it's the way the city was set up or the way the Spanish were kind of going about it. But I only really saw a handful of jerseys around the place on the Saturday, and then even on game day itself on Sunday, they had barricades around the stadium, essentially hoarding that they had trying to they had covered up with team insignias and players and stuff, but there was no atmosphere outside in the build up. There was no excitement, and even during the game, I think they did their best, and I thought with the roof being closed, with it being an indoor game effectively, that. And then there was exciting points when the Dolphins were driving or
Yeah.
teams were driving in big plays. They did kind of respond, but overall, I don't know if it's just the Spanish fans. It's the way they are at games, but I really thought there would be a raucous atmosphere in the side of the stadium, and there wasn't.
It didn't seem like that, and as you say, you can qualify that better than me because you were actually there. But Berlin was well equipped and well set up. It felt like a great place to host the game, and city wise and geographically. And the thing is, in Berlin, Germany has a lot higher cost of living than Spain does, right? So when you're charging 9, 10 euro for a beer, that's
Mm.
acceptable, and it's just it's blasé. Whereas in Spain, you do that outside the stadium, you're not very popular. And that's not in badness. That's just because the cost of living here is a lot lower than it is in Northern
Mm.
Europe. So that doesn't go down too well. And then the game itself wasn't a spectacle. We got an amazing overtime game in Berlin, and we
Yeah.
did get an overtime game in Madrid, but we had to sit through 3 hours, unfortunately, to get it. And I would assume sitting there, it felt like a bit longer of a 3 hours than it did for me the
Yes.
week before, which literally flew by in the blink of an eye. So it's going to be a big question. Does the NFL come back to
Mm.
Spain? I hope selfishly they do, but es la verdad es que no sé.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see them coming back to Spain, but perhaps trying Barcelona instead.
Mhm.
I think they had they had the idea of closing the roof, obviously, to seal that atmosphere in and make it as loud and as exciting an
Yeah.
environment as possible. But ultimately, the product on the field just let it down, and I think that's
On the
just
Barcelona topic, Jimmy, Barcelona Dragons European team went bust last year, and I just think it's such a waste because Barcelona is an unbelievable city to host. I mean, Barcelona was reborn in 1992 when it hosted the Olympics, and it became this touristic spot. It's a magnificent city. It's got everything: the coast, the Ciutat Vella, the old town, the mountains. Like everything is there in Barcelona. Madrid is it's this big metropolis that's kind of isolated in the center of the
mm,
country, but Barcelona is screaming out, and I know it's the Madrid Bravos now is the only American football team, European wise, in Spain. But Barcelona is screaming for it. So if they do come back to Spain, send it that way. I think.
I think Barcelona has. I mean, personally, I've been to Barcelona. I've been to Madrid. I personally prefer Barcelona. There is more of a kind of a young people atmosphere there, a bit more
Yeah,
of a party atmosphere,
yeah,
and I think a game in the new camp could be fantastic.
yeah,
And I think you might get a lot more buy-in. There was just a kind of an atmosphere of mehness, really, from the Spanish fans and the Spanish organization. On that topic, though, I mean, there's been a lot of discussion, given that the international slate has now finished really for this year,
mm,
where we kind of envision games going next year. So there's been some talk about dropping one London game because obviously that just drags on far too long.
yeah.
And you have the Jaguars who are they're rebuilding their stadium. They might not play internationally next year. Where would you love to see the game going if it did go to a new country next year?
Oh, well, we just said Barcelona, right? But that's not a new country. Um, I think Paris
Mm,
is on the radar. Certainly, again, huge city, but you've got that central zone around. I was just there last week, so I can really talk about this expertly. But around the Champs Elysees, around the Eiffel Tower, along the Seine, you could have all sorts going on there, and then you've got multiple options. Obviously, the Stade de France is a bit out of the way in
mm,
Saint Denis, but it's a huge stadium, and it is a rugby stadium, right, as well as a soccer stadium. And then you've got the Parc des Princes in the southwest of the city as well. So there's multiple options in Paris, and then Rome is another one that's been
mm.
thrown around. And I think the history around Rome would just make it an awesome place to sort of sightsee before the game. And imagine having some sort of NFL setup around the Coliseum. That just screams awesome. And they're going to Australia next year as well. That's
That's
already
very
locked in.
true. That's very true. They're going to
So
be
that's another
playing
spot.
in Melbourne, I believe, next
Yeah,
year in a something like 120,000 capacity
that's
Aussie
going to be
Rules
nuts.
Stadium. So we are investigating the possibility of going to Australia next
Oof.
year to Melbourne. So if anybody listening wants to open their checkbook and sponsor a trip to Australia, slide into those
Yeah,
DMs. I think Paris or Italy or Rome, Paris or Rome is the next logical step. I think a
yeah.
game in the Stadio Olimpico could be incredible.
And the track in Berlin didn't affect
No.
from the atmosphere at all. The question is whether the Italian fans can bring it, like the German fans do. I just think the German fan base is the best in all of Europe. They're just into it and they know what's happening so well.
Well, look, we won't know until next March
No.
or next spring where the NFL is coming. Hopefully back to Dublin, and hopefully we get to go to all those games. Always great fun going and seeing just how popular the sport is around the world. Okay, moving on from the topic of Dolphins and Commanders, there are some other big stories to get through and get kind of talking points to recap from during this weekend slate of games. Um, Steelers versus Bengals, Connor. This was an
Yeah.
interesting game. I went back to my hotel after the game, threw on Game Pass and stuck. I got the second half of this. It's a good win for the Steelers. Great defensive effort. Obviously, two defensive touchdowns. One from Kyle Duggar, the other from James Pierre
Mm.
on turnovers, on takeaways. But apart from another sterling defensive performance from the Steelers, I think the main kind of talking point from this one is the fact that Aaron Rodgers suffered a fractured wrist, a suspected fractured wrist, in the first half that kind of knocked him out, and he is questionable for the game against the Bears this weekend. Kyle Rudolph came in relief, played okay, had some good plays, connected for a touchdown. What did you make of the whole Aaron Rodgers? I mean, the Steelers are kind of lost without him to a certain extent.
I'd sit him this week, even if he is cleared to go, because the Bears are playing good football and they got an excellent defense. And because it's out of conference, it just hasn't got the same weight to it as Cincinnati had this week. That is a monumental win from Pittsburgh to stop the slide, and then that would have been a sweep from Cincinnati if they had won this one. So that puts him right back in contention with Joe Burrow now, set to come back whenever he's set to come back, but pretty soon. So to have Cincinnati another game and a half back on them is just a monumental win. Have Mason Rudolph steady the ship. If he can beat Chicago this week, brilliant. But if not, that's a game where you really can't afford to drop it, and really focus on your division opponents and your AFC opponents to try and make sure you can wrap up the North and make sure that Aaron Rodgers is absolutely healthy to finish the season strong and go into the playoffs with a good wrist.
Steelers have two tough matchups coming up. They have the Bears and they have the Bills. I mean, the Bears are no pushover. Yeah. We'll talk about the Bears versus the Vikings in a few minutes. Yep. I'm sure you have a lot to say about JJ McCarthy and his performance. The Bills also, that they had they bounced back over the Buccaneers. We will talk about that as well. The other kind of controversial piece from the Steelers-Bengals game is the whole Jalen Ramsey spitting issue with Jamar Chase. I mean, so there was a lot of fisticuffs going on, and that's typical of an AFC North matchup, right? Yeah. Especially two teams that have such a rivalry as the Bengals and the Steelers. We did see initially Jalen Ramsey getting ejected for allegedly throwing a punch. He didn't really throw a punch in the end, but he shouldn't have done what he did. You're taught from a very young age playing football, you do not retaliate, because 9 times out of 10 it is the retaliator that gets done, not the instigator. But upon further review, and social media kind of was lit up with this that night and the following morning, it did appear that Jamar Chase did actually spit on Jalen Ramsey and was the instigator, and still and subsequently has been suspended for a game by the NFL, despite his claims of innocence. I mean, it was just, the whole thing was a bit of a farce, really, wasn't it?
It is. I learned my lesson in 2006, and not to flip up sports because this is an American football podcast, but when Zinedine Zidane got sent off in the World Cup final, that the person who retaliates always gets punished more. So just avoid it at all costs. But at the end of the day, look, these are two guys that young kids look up to. So punching a guy from the other team and spitting at a guy from the other team are both despicable and unacceptable acts. Yeah. So just clean it up, guys. Like, we're watching you. We look up to you. We aspire to be like you. You're trying to inspire a young generation, and it's just disgusting on every scale. So I'm glad that they both have been quasi punished, because usually it's only one person sort of gets dealt the punishment. So at least they've both been dealt a blow, and hopefully we can move on from it. As you say, AFC North and just divisional games in general are chippy, but keep them chippy. Don't go to that extent. So yeah, poor.
Probably a certain amount of frustration as well from Jamar Chase and the Bengals in general, given their performance. Joe Flacco threw a pick six and had another interception as well. And Jamar Chase, really, outside of the first quarter, I mean, watching the highlights back, didn't really seem to be targeted a lot by Joe Flacco for whatever reason. There was really T. Higgins who kind of stood out as the...
Are we surprised? What did he do last time against Pittsburgh? Set a franchise record, right? Pittsburgh, we're not going to let that happen again. So as a superstar, you got to be aware of that and realize, okay, they're probably going to take me out the game this time. Be useful in the run game. Take double teams away. Open up T. Open up your tight ends. Open up the run game. Be a team player, for God's sake, and don't, whatever you do, spit at someone. It's just not good enough.
I think that's kind of all we can say about that. Look, as a Steelers fan, I am. It was great to get the win, great to bounce back after that loss against the Chargers in Los Angeles. The Steelers do not have an easy run for the rest of the season. They have the Ravens twice, who are coming back with Lamar Jackson at the helm. They have obviously the Bears and the Browns coming up. The Bears and the Bills coming up, and then another matchup with the Browns on January 4th. So, look, the Steelers, we're not out of the woods yet in terms of making the playoffs, but I would be I just don't know what team is going to show up week to week, so I never know whether to be optimistic or what
At
to
least you're not a
expect.
Chargers fan.
That is very true.
You've
That is
no
very
idea who's going
true.
to show up.
No, and we will touch on that later on in the podcast as well. Speaking of the Bears, though, another thrilling, mad finish between the
Yeah.
Vikings and the Bears, and a very very dramatic finish. Um, I mean, first of all, how are you feeling after that roller coaster on Sunday?
It's just I was trying to deflect away from it to get onto the Chargers topic. I knew this was coming up
we
next the
have
way
to
you've
we have to
scheduled it.
talk about it. We have to talk about
Yeah,
it.
listen, this it's well, let me try and find the words here. It's a developmental year, and we just have to accept that as the Minnesota fan base. This is the road we've gone down. Now you should be soothed a little bit watching Sam Darnold throw 4 interceptions. Maybe that wasn't the answer. Daniel Jones has looked a little bit shaky the last couple of weeks, and he was on a bye this week, so we can get to watch him. Aaron Rodgers is now unhealthy, so it's like the three options we could have had. None of them were either great or playing at the weekend. But McCarthy, you just got to believe, you got to trust that the organization's what they see in him, and they're right. And you've got to ride the ups and downs. And there are flashes every single week with McCarthy, but the 2 interceptions that he threw are on him this week. There's
Mm.
no disputing that. He was late on that crosser to Justin Jefferson, and Bayer was able to lurk it after he didn't see him rolling down. And then right on halftime, when you're about to get some points, maybe it's a field goal, maybe it's a touchdown, he underthrew his receiver in the back of the end zone. And okay, Nashawn Wright makes a great play, but if it's a better ball from JJ and if he's more on time, it's probably a touchdown, or at worst, it's an incompletion. So it's heavily on him. Defensively, it was a strong performance, and then the clutch gene comes in the fourth quarter, and suddenly you're back ahead again, and then you just need to play complementary football for 50 seconds and close the game out, and we can't do that. And I think last year, with the locker room mindset the team had and the unity, I think they win that game. I just think this year there's not the same gel because there's not the same confidence that the quarterback's going to get it done, which is justified. But at the end of the day, they're all professional athletes paid very highly. So with 50 seconds left in the game in your head, you got to close the game out. It's unacceptable.
You would think with the way the defense were playing for stretches during that game that the Bears didn't have a hope in hell of driving down the field and
But
scoring
they
that field
didn't.
goal.
But they didn't, because it was a this goes down as the ironic thing is this goes down as a game-winning drive by Caleb Williams. Right, they had a 55-yard kick return followed by 3 handoffs and a field goal, and that is technically a game-winning drive for Caleb Williams. Like the field goal coverage is all that's blown this
Yes.
game. So and that's where statistics that's why you can't just come on a podcast and look at the statistics. You have to actually sit down and watch, otherwise you're going to be spitting nonsense, because you come on and say another game-winning drive for Caleb Williams. Now he handed the ball off 3 times and they went and kicked field goal. So
It was effective. I mean, it should have been a game-winning drive for JJ McCarthy. I mean, he was absolutely
exactly
masterful in the last. I mean, he was driving down the field with under a minute to go.
85 yards.
Calmly hits what's his face, number 3, Jordan Addison for a touchdown.
Yeah.
I watched the highlights back. I actually watched the extended highlights, so I'd be able to get more of an understanding of the game. And I was watching the first 3 quarters. JJ McCarthy was up and down, but he was mostly down.
It was a carbon copy of the the season opener on Monday night, where he played woeful for 3 quarters and came back roaring back, and they won the game. The only difference is now his teammates didn't help close it out. That's the only difference in this game. And if the Minnesota Vikings woke up today 5-5, the media is talking about JJ McCarthy, the clutch gene, and the hoodoo he has over the Chicago Bears, because the Bears can't close out a fourth quarter. So it's like the fine margins in the NFL. Instead of being a half game back on Chicago, Minnesota's now 3 games back on the Bears. That's the season done mathematically. Minnesota has to ostensibly now, with the strength of the NFC, win out. That is so improbable of happening. So if you're a Vikings fan this morning, just kind of accept that this is probably not going to be a playoff year. Just mathematically speaking, there's not enough spots for Minnesota with a 4-6. It's not good enough.
Yeah, it's like you said, this definitely has to be a developmental and a learning year for JJ McCarthy. This effectively is his rookie year, because he had the injury last year, so you can't expect him, I don't think, to come in and play to the same level, given he's had absolutely no game time really bar this season. So all you can do is take this as a learning year and hope to God that the Bears, I don't know, fall apart, or the Lions fall apart, or I mean, the Packers, we won't get into this, there are bigger games to talk about. The Packers barely beat the Giants on Sunday, so that says a lot about where they are.
But they beat them, and it's like in the NFL, you're going to have games where you squeak over the line, you barely beat them. How many games in the Chiefs Super Bowl seasons did they squeak over the line, right, where they didn't look awesome? But that's what good teams do. They get over the line. If once you're in the playoffs, nobody remembers that week 11 game on the road or whatever it was that you won by 3 points and you were pretty poor on two of the phases, but you got it done. It's all about in the NFL wins and losses. That's it's predicated on that.
You bringing up the Chiefs takes us very nicely to our next segment, and I feel like the AFC West has been woefully underrepresented on this
Yes,
podcast. So I thought it was time to rectify that because again, this was obviously with the excitement of the early game in Madrid. I unfortunately did not get to watch this game live on Red Zone as I would have wished, and I'm very much looking forward to being on my couch this Sunday, glued to the Steelers game and to Red
hmm
Zone instead of highfalutin around the place. But the Broncos' dominance, Connor, in the AFC West is something that is evident now with their win over the Chiefs and the fact that the Chargers have lost to the Chargers lost to the Jaguars. They are 9-2.
yeah,
They are on course to be one of the best. They are effectively one of the top teams in the AFC. I mean, and I know our kind of predictions and odds change week to week, but I do if they can continue this run of form, and if Cortland Sutton and Bo Nix can
Knicks,
continue their chemistry, if the defense continue playing to a high level, there's no reason why the Chiefs do not face off against the Patriots in the AFC champion. Sorry, the Broncos
Broncos.
don't face off against the Patriots in the AFC Championship game this year.
I still think the Chiefs will get in the playoffs, but it won't be at the expense of the Denver Broncos. Denver are too far clear of them now in the AFC. We said a couple of weeks ago, Chiefs have to win that one mathematically. So what a statement win for Denver, the only team
Big
in the
time.
AFC. What a statement win, and what a day to be a Broncos fan around the league too, because the Raiders lost last night too. Not that they're particularly in it, but the Chargers lost. The entire AFC lost or AFC West lost yesterday, with the exception of the Denver Broncos. This game had Chiefs squeak out the win at the end, written all over it. The commentary team, Holmes coming out with 3 minutes 40 left. He's had 42 getting winning drives in his career, and it just went nowhere.
Yeah.
And then you're like 3rd and 15. Okay, the Broncos are going to give it up again. Nix makes a big play, and then they get in a field goal range, and so it's like wow. And the way that game ended last year with the block field goal that Denver didn't quite do the Chiefs, quite nice that they managed to get it done this year. And what a statement for the Denver Broncos. They're the real deal.
So I remember actually this time last year, roughly, I was in an Irish bar in Munich watching Red Zone after the Panthers and the Giants had
Yeah,
played in Bayern Munich there
yeah,
for the international
Allianz,
game in Germany. And watching this game on Red Zone comes down to a last second field goal for the Broncos and the Chiefs,
which they should have hit.
at, as they did last year, that they pulled wins out of nowhere. So it was, I suppose, I was delighted to see that the Broncos actually make the field goal this
Yeah,
year. And I think what I love most is the fact that the Chiefs are getting beaten and beaten soundly, and
yeah,
defenses are finally stymieing Mahomes. I mean, the best player for the game in that game for the Chiefs was Travis Kelce,
he
who
was
set
good.
the all-time franchise record with 84 total touchdowns. So congratulations to him. Um, I don't see the Chiefs. They might just squeak the last seed, but it's going to be very, very close. I mean, teams have them figured out. Mahomes' magic has dried up finally. I think it's a new age in the AFC.
I There's a new age in the AFC, but I don't see the AFC playoff bracket without the Kansas City Chiefs. And I'll stay on that hill until until week 18. But yeah, they're gonna be at the dance in some way, shape, or form. They're gonna be on the road, but they're gonna be at the dance.
At this stage of the season, we are going into week 12 now. We only have 6 more weeks of regular season NFL left. Give us your prediction for the AFC Championship. I know this is all kind of this could all change in a matter of weeks, but I always like to kind of see where we're at and assess where we're at
Yeah.
with championship picks.
I think the New England Patriots will be there. I think they've been the most consistent team in the AFC, and I think they're going to have the home field advantage going through it. I think they're going to be there. Who they match up against, obviously it depends on the way it plays out. I think Buffalo might be there. I think looking at that show and yesterday, they're also up for a fight. And the thing with Buffalo is they have the ability just to outscore. I hope you're not writing down my prediction here and going to show it to me
It's
in
on
three
record.
months.
It's on the transcript. I can go back and pull these transcripts whenever I want.
I'll go on AFC East showdown. I'll go with the Patriots against the Bills, permitting they don't meet each
Ooh,
other in the divisional or before it.
that is very interesting. Yeah, the Bills. Sure, go on. Let's go on to the Bills here. We may as well, as soon as you brought them up, Bills and
Yeah,
Buccaneers. a showdown
Yep.
in Buffalo, New York, between two teams who really needed a win. The Bills needed a win in a big way after
Yep.
their kind of collapse against the Dolphins last week, and the Buccaneers just had to kind of, they were, look, obviously their Buccaneers are so depleted on offense and on
Hmm.
defense, and their season is kind of slipping away from them despite Baker Mayfield's heroics.
Yeah.
This one was absolutely wild, 44-32 in favor of the Bills. I think there was something like 9 lead changes in this game.
There was. Do you know what? This is one where if you're a Buccaneers fan, I don't think you're too mad about losing it. I keep harping on about out of conference, but it was out of conference, and it's only the Panthers that the Bucks. They do have to look over their shoulder because Carolina are thereabouts with them now for the lead of the NFC South. But I wouldn't be too upset. You know, he scored 32 points, and 9 lead changes. Wacky game, and it's one of those ones where somebody has to win, somebody has to lose. And Buffalo also needed it very badly, and they played excellent offensively. So kudos to them, and I think both those teams will be in the playoffs.
I mean, Josh Allen overcame his first play of the game. He threw an interception, which went
Yeah,
for a field goal. The Buccaneers couldn't capitalize. And then he just kind of put those mistakes behind him. He put the bad performance of the Dolphins last week behind him, and
yeah.
he absolutely went off. He was slinging it. He was rushing for touchdowns. He was back to his old self. Um, and just two dudes going at it in Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield, which you love to see as well.
Yeah, that's what the NFL is all about. Great quarterback matchups, and they gave us a show. It's a shame wasn't like a one score game where it came down to a field goal at the end. That would have been the icing on the cake. But for about 2 hours and 45 minutes, it was a compelling watch. So kudos to those guys. And like I said, I don't think either team has to worry. I think they'll both be in the playoffs come January.
Shout out as well to the Buccaneers backup running back Sean Tucker, an absolute kind of unknown to this point, playing
Yeah,
in the absence of Bucky Irving. He had 3 touchdowns and he looked absolutely electric, like a potential future star for the Buccaneers. I mean,
yeah.
apparently he was a college standout for Syracuse, I believe, but the Buccaneers leaned heavily on him, and it was just as well that they had a strong running game as well.
Yeah, I mean, you go to the guy that's on form in the moment. Look at Troy Parrott. Ireland have lent on him in the past 4 days, and I had to throw that in at some point. You know,
Well, I
yeah,
tell you what, we were watching an RTE player in the stands in the Bernabeu, and there was some strange looks when all the Irish lads. There was an entire row of Irish media in
yeah.
the media section, and there was a couple of screams at certain points during the game. So if anyone was at the game and was wondering what was going on, there's your explanation.
You talk about clutch. You think Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Troy Parrott's name is in that conversation now.
Hmm.
That was a pretty cool moment. But yeah, look, this is how opportunities come about in the NFL. Most of the time, it's through injury and not expecting to be thrust in. But when you get your chances as a player that's lesser known or lower draft or whatever it may be, you have to take it. And he sure did. And I'm sure he'll be running right next week as well.
Um, so that kind of cements the Bills. Well, it doesn't really cement the Bills. It gets them back into the playoff picture after a couple
They're
of.
probably going to be the wild card, Jimmy. Like just looking at it straight up, because New England are just so far in front, and they're going to have to beat New England in that showdown, and they're probably going to have to win out and hope New England slip up a couple of times now on the way in. But yeah, they're probably going to be on the road.
I don't see New England slipping up the way they've been playing. I mean,
No,
they battered the Jets on Thursday Night Football. Trevion Henderson rushing for
do
three
you know? And
touchdowns.
do you know what? That was the best type of win they could have had because a 40 or 50 point blowout wouldn't have done them any good. The game was somewhat competitive throughout, but it was always going to be a New England win. 30 points, defense played relatively well. Drake May looked composed. The pass rush never really got to him. Like that was just the archetypal perfect win to put them away on Thursday night. To keep them juiced up and going strong.
Speaking of the New York Jets, it came out today that head coach Aaron Glenn has decided to bench Justin Fields in favor of the backup Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah,
Um, I suppose giving a limited kind of sample
for the
size
second time.
of Taylor's play this year, he has produced better results. Is this the right move, Connor? Do you think? Do you kind of feel bad for Justin Fields and what he's been through, or are the Jets just clutching at straws now, asking a late 30s quarterback, who's a journeyman, to come in and save their season? He can save the season. The season is gone. I mean, are
Yeah.
they just playing for pride now at this stage, or what do you think Aaron Glenn's reasoning was for officially benching Justin Fields this week?
The reasoning is because in the NFL, when things aren't going to plan, the first move is to, as long as it's not a hugely established name, is to bench the quarterback. And sometimes it doesn't matter about the quarterback play, it just creates a spark in the locker room because there's somebody else calling out the huddle. That's why. Do I feel for Justin Fields? Yes. I don't think any quarterback would have been successful with the New York Jets this season. They've had bad luck. They've thrown all their star players away. They've traded them all away, thrown the season in, and Justin Fields has just ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time. So hopefully for him, he'll get another chance somewhere. I don't see it though, because it's a what can you do for me now kind of league, and it hasn't looked good. So yeah, good luck to Tyrell Taylor.
Somebody mentioned to me in passing that Justin Fields could potentially come back to the Steelers next year. Maybe not as a starting quarterback, but as a backup quarterback. Because I think the way Aaron Rodgers is looking, unless things have a sharp turnaround and they make the postseason and win a game in the postseason, I don't think either party would be interested in bringing him back. Obviously, we have Will Howard in there as well in the mix. But Justin Fields could be an interesting addition because look, Mason Rudolph will not get the job done. There's no one really coming through in this draft who stands out to me as a potential number one pick for the Steelers. Could you envision a situation where the Steelers bring Fields back just to have the kind of veteran depth at quarterback?
Yeah, definitely. Probably the best suitor for Justin, because he had relative success there, and we obviously got on with Mike Tomlin. So I mean, there's potential. I think it's too far off to be talking about that now. That's a conversation for after the season. We'll see how it all pans out.
We'll keep that for a podcast
Write that one down as well.
in the postseason when we need content. We'll be talking about that.
Yeah.
Speaking of quarterback situations elsewhere, Michael Penix of the Falcons has been placed on injured reserve, going down with a recurrence of a bone bruise, I believe, from what I read, and a potential ACL injury as well. I want to touch on this briefly because the Panthers bet the Falcons 30-27. Bryce Young had one of his best games ever as a Panther. He threw for 448 yards and 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 31 out of 45, perfect passer rating. The Panthers are 6-5. Connor, they're not dead in the NFC South yet. People have written off the Panthers for years, but I've always believed in Bryce Young. I've seen him play live, and when he plays calm, composed, and he gets the support he needs, he can be. I think Dave Canales has done a really good job of bringing him along this year as well.
He's done an excellent job. The Panthers have some marquee wins. Raheem Morris might be on the hot seat now, and I think Coach Morris is a good coach. I don't necessarily think he should be on the hot seat, but when you lose 5 games straight in the NFL, that tend to be what happens. And now it's the Kirk Cousins show in Atlanta. They're 7 losses now. They're probably too far away. If they win out, they might squeak in, but I don't see it happening. There'll be one team in the playoffs from the NFC South, and it'll be the Buccaneers or the Panthers. And so the Panthers might host a playoff game this year. They genuinely might do that. And on paper at the moment, they're probably the best team in the NFC South. So kudos to Dave Canales and to Bryce Young. That was an exceptional performance. They nearly didn't win with the exceptional performance, but they managed to squeak over the line, and that was a monumental win for Carolina yesterday.
Kirk Cousins obviously coming back into the fold as a starting quarterback, a position he's well used to. Is this more of an addition for his current job next year, or is it an addition for a job elsewhere?
Well, yes and no, Jimmy, because if it is ACL with Penix, that could be 12 months. Realistically, it'll be 9 if it is ACL with how advanced NFL recovery is. But if it is something really, really bad, it will certainly eat into the entire off season of his preparation, and it might go into September, October time. So Atlanta may well keep Kirk Cousins there again on that big contract to play the first half or first 4 games of that season. So it's an audition for Kirk in some way, shape, or form, but it might not solely be an audition for a different team. Let's see how the injury is for Michael Penix, and if it is bad, it may well be Kirk Cousins' show to start the season next September.
Which is what he anticipated when he signed with the Falcons way back when they would be the starting quarterback.
Another two years on his deal after this season finishes. He signed a 4-year deal. So
very strange situation. One of the highest paid backup quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah.
Let's just before we kind of wrap up and look ahead to Week 12. Let's touch briefly on the Jags and Chargers, because you texted into our group on Sunday. What in the actual Holy Jacksonville.
What in the Jacksonville? What in the Jacksonville was my direct quote. Yeah,
And like again, I went back and watched the highlights here, and it is so obvious that the Chargers are in trouble, which really pissed me off because that they smashed the Steelers in Los Angeles and then go to Everbank
yeah,
Stadium and take a big dump all over the field
yep,
against the Jaguars. And speaking of statement wins, the Jags needed a massive statement win after losing to the Texans in that fashion last weekend.
yeah, yeah. I called Atlanta the most erratic team in football. There's now a lot of erratic teams. Atlanta aren't that more erratic anymore because they've let five slide. So that's not erratic. That's just bad. But now the Chargers. I mean, what the heck? Jacksonville, like just two teams that you have no idea what you're going to get. Nobody saw this one coming. This would have destroyed so many accumulators. Last weekend there was a lot of money lost in America last weekend because of this result.
I think they call
And
them parlays in America, not accumulators.
oh,
But
sorry, parlay. Yeah, my bad.
your point stands.
Yes. Just an absolutely bizarre score, and Travis Hunter took a lot of the headlines in Jacksonville throughout the whole off season and leading into it. Like, there's no Travis Hunter now. He is not even in the
No,
fray.
he's out for the
Offense,
season.
defense is out. And so it was a Hunterless show, unlike the Shadorless show, because he finally got his start or his action in Cleveland. But yeah, just absolutely bizarre. And the Chargers, you're disappointed because you kind of, as a neutral, you want to see the Chiefs kind of held back by somebody new, and you're like, okay, the Broncos are flying, but let's keep the Chargers flying too. And they just look like they're incapable of being consistent.
Well, they're missing their two starting their two starting tackles and Joe Alt.
Everyone's missing somebody, right? And this is, but it's a fair argument. The team that stays the most healthy is probably
But
going to go the
you
furthest.
could see that, like, I mean, the Jacksonville got pressure on Justin Herbert, and he
Yeah.
couldn't do anything. He and they a complete lack of a run game as far as I can see.
Even
But
if
once
you're
they
not
got
an American football like avid watcher, everybody watched the Super Bowl where Brady destroyed Mahomes. And it wasn't Brady destroying Mahomes. Mahomes was running for his life the entire game because
yeah.
the Chiefs didn't have their two tackles. If you can't keep your quarterback upright and give him 2.5 seconds to scan the field, you will not win the game.
Yeah, disappointing for the Chargers getting blown. I mean, nobody saw that result coming.
No.
The Chargers getting blown out against the Jaguars. So against the Jaguars are one to watch, and they're probably going to win the AFC South at this stage, unless the Colts can keep up the way they're
No, the Colts will win the AFC South. The Colts will win the AFC South. The question is, can Jacksonville? Because Jacksonville are now on the same. Jacksonville are above Kansas City because they got a tiebreaker actually because they beat them earlier on the year. So can Jacksonville keep up winning and keep pace for that wild card spot? Because the Colts, I think, are too far away. They're gonna wrap up the AFC South.
Well, that brings us nicely into our final segment of this week's podcast, where we, as we usually do, take a look ahead to some of the best matchups of Week 12 and give our top picks. For me, Connor, there's a couple of fixtures that stand out. Obviously, you mentioned the Colts there. That game against the Chiefs is absolutely huge for both teams. That's on Sunday evening at 1:00 US time. Both sides need to get a win. The Chiefs in particular in this one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bigger game for Kansas City than it is for Indy, to be honest. Indy need to keep up for the number one seed, but for Kansas City, it's monumental. It's huge. They need it.
Speaking of other top fixtures, we have the Packers and Vikings, a tough test for both teams there. It'll be very interesting to keep an eye on. The Lions and the Giants is intriguing, I think, given how the Giants almost pulled off an upset against an apparent upset against the Packers.
Yeah.
Bears, Steelers, obviously we talked about that. That game could go anywhere, to be honest with you. Again, keep Cowboys Eagles Sunday night 9:25 Irish time. That's always a great game.
Always a good game.
Those two teams absolutely hate each other, more so than the Steelers and the Ravens or Steelers Bengals. And then Sunday Night Football is a very, very intriguing game. Rams and Buccaneers, two quarterbacks who have been in conversation for the MVP at certain points throughout the season. Baker Mayfield, perhaps sliding back now on Matt Stafford. I think the MVP. I think I had this conversation in Madrid on Sunday, and I think the consensus is that the league MVP will come down to Matt Stafford or Drake May. And I think just given the fact that this is likely Matt Stafford's last season, and the Rams are currently looking like a contender for the Super Bowl. It could definitely most likely be Matt Stafford winning MVP.
Yeah, the only knock I have on Matt Stafford from last week is that they didn't put the game away earlier because they were starting that was a 10 point or 12 point lead for a long time, and they could have put it to bed a lot earlier and they didn't. And Seattle very nearly came back and nicked that game, but for the missed long field goal. So that's my only knock on him. But otherwise, he's been playing sensational and he's at the forefront. Him and May, yeah, they've been the two best players in the NFL, and Jonathan Taylor. But it probably won't go to anyone but a quarterback.
Very
So.
unlikely to go to a running back, just the way
And he had a bye week as well, right? So you can't play. Sometimes you can play well in your bye week if your opponents don't do well, but they did okay. So yeah, it wasn't the right week to have a bye week for Jonathan Taylor.
No. 49ers Panthers and Monday Night Football then is intriguing as well. 49ers got to win over the Cardinals on Sunday, and the Panthers again, they could do anything. The Niners are back to full health with Brock Purdy, George Kittle, and obviously missing Fred Warner still, but they're not dead and buried yet.
Yeah, but if the Panthers can win that one, and I know I said there's only going to be one team to come out of the NFC South, but if they're not above San Francisco by that point, they're at least level with them, and they'd have the tiebreaker. So they're going to be right there or thereabouts. If Bryce Young has a great game, Carolina can win that for sure. They will be underdogs in it, but not by much.
Well, as always, I mean, there's so many games to be looking forward to next weekend. My plan is to have Red Zone on the laptop and have the main game on the big screen. Connor, thanks again for your time. Thanks for holding down the fort with me. We will be hopefully back to regular scheduling podcasts on Monday next week. So make sure to stay tuned. Also, I will leave you with a little teaser. We are in talks with a Dublin City Centre major bar for a Super Bowl party. So it could be the first ever Super Bowl party for Gaelic Gridiron happening this February coming. So keep an eye on our socials for more of that. Thank you again to our sponsors, Print My Pint. Make sure you check them out for your next wedding, birthday, or special event, printmypint.ie. Like, subscribe, follow us on social media. Keep listening, keep supporting. We do appreciate it. And Connor, I will see you very, very soon.